Hey guys, Stuart Breeding. Today we're going to be talking about the posterior chain, the importance of strengthening the posterior chain, and we're going to go through 4 or 5 different exercises and teach you how you can actually do that. Okay guys, so the posterior chain, I'm sure you've heard many people talk about it. Basically, think about it in the terms of anterior chain is everything I can see in front of me. Posterior chain are all the muscle groups behind me. It's very common to overtrain and overdevelop anterior chain and neglect the posterior chain, largely because it's the muscles that we see, so it's the muscles we pay attention to: chest, abdominals, quadriceps, biceps, things like that. Then we neglect the posterior chain. Now, I will say one is not more important than the other. What is important is that both the anterior and posterior chain are developed equally, so we have a proper length-tension relationship. And it doesn't matter what kind of athlete you are. If you're just using weight training to stay in great shape, you have to develop a strong posterior chain in order to stay super healthy. So the first exercise that we're going to go into is going to be my absolute favorite. It's a bent row. Now I'm going to do it with a barbell, and then I'm going to show you variations with dumbbells in case you don't have a barbell at home. The bent row, I think, is one of the most classic exercises out there. And when I say classic, I'm talking about your squat, your deadlift, your bench press. On the other side of that, the bent row is absolutely essential. So setting it up is not so easy. The very first thing I have to do before I assume any exercise, before I start to perform any exercise, is go through my anatomical checklist, or what Kelly Charette would call getting organized. I tend to think about that anatomical checklist because it helps me to make sure that I'm going through all my body parts one at a time, making sure everything is in line and where it's supposed to be. Now, that starts with head position. I want to make sure my head is neutral and basically stacked right on top of my spine. It's not forward. I'm projecting forward, and I'm definitely not going backwards. So once it's stacked on the shoulders, I breathe in deeply and I retract my scapula. Now, if I do that, what you're going to notice is I immediately go to a lordotic curve. Well, we don't want that either. So how do I get that out? So step 1, head, shoulders, then contract the abdominals. So if you watch me do it in sequence, head position, big deep breath, shoulders. Now if I contract abs, watch what happens to my spine. Everything is in line now. My shoulder, hip, knee, ankle, everything is in a straight line, and the spine is now neutral. Now this is the posture we got to have before we set up these posterior chain exercises. If you don't have it, your internal stabilizers, your local stabilizers that are attaching your hip and spine, are not firing correctly. So there's all these big muscles, quadriceps, abdominals, lower back muscles, and glutes that you can see and touch. Think about your local stabilizers as the muscles you can't see on the inside with everything coming around it. So if you don't have that foundation on the inside, that foundation is gone and the movement will crush you. It will cause injury. So first thing I'm going to do, and usually I'm facing the other way on this bent row. First thing I'm going to do is get my hand position that's right for me, and I would recommend it's the same as your bench grip. Okay? In many ways, the bent row is the exact opposite movement as the bench press. Okay? So I'm going to get my hand position, walk up under the bar. My knees are up under it, so I'm actually cradling the bar on my quadricep when I get ready to lift this off. Now, before I go, head position, shoulders are back, tight abdominals, and then I'm going to stand up with the weight, step out of the rack. Once again, I'm usually facing the other way. From here, this is the trick, guys. From here, I've got to start moving into the RDL, which is the next movement we're going to explore. And what I'm going to do is hold that upper body position and drive my hip back, lowering the bar right below the kneecap until I'm parallel to the floor. From there, the bar is coming directly underneath my xiphoid, more into the stomach, high stomach, than into my chest. Elbows are moving back. Scapula is highly engaged and it's retracting, pulling the bar back. So if you look at it from here, if I were to lay down on the ground and then do a bench press, you would see the similarities of the movement. Strong lats, strong posterior chain in the lats is critical to a strong bench press. So once again, I'm organized, I walk out with the bar, my hip drives back, my head stays neutral, I'm not looking up, I'm looking straight down, and I'm rowing the bar directly underneath the xiphoid and the high belly, top of the abdominals. Okay guys, now we're going to do it with dumbbells. So let's just presuppose those dumbbells are on the ground. Now, before I pick up anything, if I'm going to pick up, a Kleenex off the ground, I'm going to organize or get my checklist together before I go down. So everything's going to be integrated, organized. I'm going to go down, get my dumbbells, pick them back up, and then from here, once again, I'm going to go into my setup. Head position, shoulders are back, tight abdominals, drive the hip back. So if you look at this position, once again, my shoulder is almost directly in line with my knee. My torso is not pushed forward, and this is what people do. They get their center of mass way out here where they're heavy on the toes, and it's a matter of time before the spine is compensated one way or the other. The center of mass has got to shift back, finding that proximal end of the hamstring that's also critical in squats and deadlifts. This is why the bent row is such a great exercise. So as you set this guy up, shoulders, abs, hips, flat, tight back, looking at the floor. Once again, I'm engaging from the shoulder blade first, slowly lowering back down to the floor. And you'll know you're getting this right when you get a deep quad burn, and also you're really starting to activate glutes and hamstrings in the back in an isometric contraction. Okay guys, so next in the list, the Romanian deadlift, the RDL, absolutely has to be in the repertoire of exercise choices. And there's a lot of different ideas on the Romanian deadlift. I'm going to show you two variations, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I choose them or why one would be right for you over the other. The first one I'm going to do is going to be from the rack, again, just like I set up that bent row. So I'm going to walk up to the bar, find my hand position, and this time it's going to be the same as my deadlift position, all right? Now, some people will do over-under or double over. It's your choice once again. So I deadlift over-under, but when I do an RDL, I'll do both hands in an over grip. So once I set that up, my knees are underneath it once again. So when I stand up, it's my skeletal structure that accepts the weight. It's not my lower back. I walk up under that weight. Once again, I would usually face toward the rack. Stand with it. Get some space. From here, the very first thing I'm going to do, once again, is make sure my upper body is in the correct position. Head, shoulders, tight abs. Inhale, brace. Hips, drive. I come back to that bent row and bring my hip right back up underneath me. I go down to that bent row position and come right back. Now, depth is something that you will have to explore on your own. I can make it all the way to the floor and stay in a neutral spine position. Depending on the length of your torso, depending on the length of your femur, you may, or flexibility issues, you may or may not be able to do that. But what you want to be thinking about, and we'll go into this in both the swing and slams, is the hips are primary. What I'm doing is a hip hinge. This is the beginning of the squat. At some point, your hip will not go back any further. I can't flex it anymore. From here, this is where we're starting to get into knee and ankle flexion and extension. So everything is starting with the hip hinge, and my hip comes right back up. I'm moving to the wall behind me. The knee is at about 20 degrees. Does not increase its range of motion, turning it into a squat. And then my hip drives right back up. Hip goes this way, hip goes that way. So the range of motion is moving parallel to the floor. Okay guys, not to be too redundant, but I want to do it with dumbbells and make sure that you guys know how to do it if you don't have a barbell. Once again, I've grabbed my dumbbells. I'm going to get organized, head position, shoulders are back, tight abs, and once again, I'm going to keep those dumbbells right on my leg. So one thing I didn't talk about with the barbell was, if I'm doing this correctly, the bar or the dumbbell is going to stay right here on my legs. If it's moving away from you, that means your center of mass is moving forward. You don't have enough hip play in it. So one way of knowing you're in the correct position is, are the dumbbells staying on my leg or are they starting to drift away? But the dumbbell is the exact same as the bar. The only difference is they will probably be sitting on the side of your leg with your thumbs in this position, as opposed to the bar with your thumbs internally rotated. That's the only difference there. Okay guys, so the other variation I wanted to show you on the RDL is from the floor. So for a beginner, I would recommend starting from the rack, unracking, going down as far as you can. For a more advanced lifter with good flexibility, I'd recommend doing the RDL from the floor, especially if the deadlift is of concern to you. If you're training a deadlift and you want to get stronger, one of the reasons the deadlift makes you stronger is it's in a dead position. We are eliminating the stretch reflex. If I unrack from the squat rack and I load the bar, I am stretching those muscles and they automatically want to rebound and help bring that bar back up, much like the bottom of a squat. I'm engaging the stretch reflex. Well, one of the greatest ways to strengthen the body is to overcome the weight from a static position, such as a box squat. I go down to the bottom, I relax, and I overcome and remove the stretch reflex. I'm going to do the same thing with the RDL. So I'm going to set this up just like I would my deadlift. So I'm going to walk up, address the bar. Everybody has their ideas of space in between the shin and where the center of the foot should be. I will tell you, the center of the foot is not in the middle of the foot. It's more towards the top knot of your shoe. So what I tend to do is to line that top knot directly underneath the bar until the knot disappears. I'm about 2 inches away from the bar. Now from here, once again, I'm going to get organized, head position, shoulders are back, tight abdominals, my hip goes back, and I'm going to slowly lower myself down to that bar. So at 20 degrees, that's when I'm going to stop bending. In a deadlift, I would continue to drop down as low as possible. In the RDL, I'm going to move back into my hip hinge, and then I'm going to keep driving my hip back, back, and to where my upper body literally feels like it's just hanging on the hip. From here, I should easily be able to find my bar. I'm going to pull and tighten, re-engage everything. Pull the shoulders back, tighten up on the bar, take the slack out. So you can see, even at this depth, this increased range of motion, I've got a neutral spine position. I am really pushing into the proximal end of my hamstring. My glutes are highly engaged, abs, lower back, nothing is not firing. Take your time if you're going to try this exercise or this variation. Okay guys, the mighty kettlebell swing. We're going to start this exercise the same way we do all others. Before we pick up a heavy object, doesn't matter what it weighs, I'm going to get organized, make sure my abdominals are contracted specifically, squat down, pick up the belt. Now, the biggest differences between this exercise and an RDL is Number one, this is a very dynamic exercise. So it's going to teach those posterior chain muscles how to fire dynamically and integrate some power into your training. The second thing is my RDL stance was my deadlift stance, very close together. This is going to be with my squat stance, so feet are wider apart. Once I start this movement, I'm going to get the space between my feet correct. Hang the bell at the hip. Now before I swing, I'm going to reorganize. Head position, shoulders are back, tight abdominals, hip hinge. So my knee, once again, is bent about 20 degrees. It's the same as the RDL. I've got a big inference on this hamstring muscle. Once I get that position, I'm going to drive my hip back into the bell and begin the momentum, begin the pendulum. As the range of motion is increasing, I'm going to move my upper body a little bit deeper into flexion and extension. So when I start, I might be maybe 45, 60, and then I'm going to make it all the way down to about 90 degrees of rotation. The bell is passing between my legs, my hamstring is highly activated, and my hip is going from the wall behind me to the wall in front of me. Now, a couple of things you want to pay attention to. As you increase the momentum, make sure that your abdominals, legs, and hips, when you get to that top position, are locked in place so you maintain a neutral spine position. We're not hyperextending, moving out and away. So once again, that swing increases the range of motion, parallel to the floor, hips drive, come back up, full contraction. The height of the belt is up to you. If you want, you can bring it higher. If you feel like that's a little dangerous, bring it down a little bit lower. But that's your kettlebell swing. Last but not least, the ball slam. Now remember, all these exercises are meant to activate the posterior chain. There are other variations of them. These are specifically designed to help you activate the posterior chain. So as far as the ball slam goes, I want you to look at all the similarities that I have used in the other exercises all the way down into how we pick up this ball and slam it. So first things first, I'm going to assume my squat stance once again. Organize, pick up the ball. Stand back up and then reorganize. Now, this ball is going to come overhead, and when I do, I don't want to do it in such a way that I lose that organization. I'm going to keep those abs contracted and raise my arms up. As I do that, I should be in a neutral, straight spine once again, as opposed to being loose and hyperextending at the back or getting that lordotic curve. So you want to pay attention to your posture as that ball comes up. So tight abs, ball comes up. Now from here, I'm going to drive my hands with an extended elbow hard down into the floor, activating my glute, and then isometrically putting on the brakes, stopping my range of motion while I'm horizontal to the floor. Once again, does this look familiar to you? I've been activating the same muscles with different mediums in all of these exercises. So I'll do a couple reps. So I'm going to pick it up, organize, pick it up overhead, tight abdominals. My hip and arms are going to move together as one single lever and down into the floor. So where I'm looking is where the ball goes. So I should be able to pick that ball up again, but look at my final position. Look how far my butt is behind me and my shoulders are square. Right over top of my knee, right over top of the center of the foot. Okay guys, so I hope this video helps you include some of these exercises into your program design, start activating that posterior chain. If you have not been doing these movements, move into them slowly. Make sure that you're integrating your upper body correctly. You're in a tight brace before you begin any of these movements. The number one issue with all these exercises, and the reason most people don't want to do them, is they cause lower back soreness. They're causing lower back soreness, once again, because internally you're not stabilizing your spine and hip correctly. So practice getting organized, just standing straight up. Make sure your abs are highly engaged. If you're moving into these exercises and your abs are soft, the back is going to be compensated. So hope you guys enjoyed it and have fun with these.